sit back, relax, and be inspired once again with this noble tale.
Christmas time, a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable time. Indeed, Christmas time is not the time when most of the populace expects to hear a good ghost story. But I will endeavor in this ghostly little story to raise the ghost of an idea which shall not put you out of humor with yourselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. I only wish that it may haunt you pleasantly. For Christmas time is a pleasant time, the only time I know of in the long calendar of the year, when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely and to think of all people as fellow passengers to the grave. And therefore, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe it has done me good, and will do me good, and I say, God bless it. On a cold and foggy Christmas Eve, old, tight-fisted and covetous Ebenezer Scrooge sat busy in the shivering chill of his counting house. In the dismal cell that was next room, his clerk, Bob Cratchit, worked by a stove, the flame kept barely alive with less than one lump of coal to fuel the flickering ember. That afternoon, Scrooge reluctantly looked up as a visitor entered his office. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle!" cried the cheerful voice. It was Scrooge's nephew Fred, who had arrived full of the spirit of Christmas. "Come, dine with us tomorrow, Uncle," said Fred. It was a generous invitation, to which Ebenezer Scrooge sternly replied, "Bah, humbug." "Oh, I'm sorry to find you so resolute," replied Fred, "but I will keep my Christmas humor to the last. So, Merry Christmas to you, Uncle." Now, as Fred left, two portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, arrived at the door with their hats in hand, seeking to collect charitable donations for the poor. "Am I not taxed enough for the poor?" barked Scrooge as he ushered them to the door. "Are there no prisons? Are there no union workhouses?" snarled Scrooge. Oh yes, but many can't go there. Many would rather die," stammered one of the gentlemen. "If they would rather die, then they'd better do it to decrease the surplus population," sneered Scrooge, as he summarily dismissed them without a penny. After closing up for the day and begrudgingly giving Bob Cratchit the next day off for Christmas, Scrooge retired to his gloomy home. As he slid his key into the lock of his front door, an apparition appeared in the door knocker. It was the ghostly face of his former partner, Jacob Marley, who had died 7 years before that very night. sat down in his chair before the fire and began to eat his gruel. Soon he noticed the faint tinkling of an unused bell that hung in the corner. One by one, every bell in the house began to ring out and ring out loudly. Suddenly, Scrooge heard footsteps heavily thumping up the stairs, and with them a clanking noise, as if a person were dragging a heavy chain. A ghostly figure floated through the locked door. It was Jacob Marley, bound in chains and dragging behind him a trail of cash boxes, keys, ledgers, deeds, padlocks, and more chains wrought in steel. Though he saw the death-cold phantom standing before him, Scrooge fought against his senses and growled, "You humbug! I tell you, humbug!" At this, the spirit cried, "I have wandered the earth for 7 years as punishment for neglecting the needs of my fellow men. I have come to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping this same fate. You will be hunted by 3 spirits, Scrooge. Expect the first tomorrow when the clock tolls 1. And then the ghost of Marley floated out through an open window into the bleak, dark night. Scrooge slammed shut the window, went straight to bed without undressing, and exhausted, fell asleep upon the instant. Scrooge awoke. It was still quite dark and extremely cold. Perplexed and deeply bothered with a mix of dread and astonishment as he thought of Marley's ghost, he asked himself, was it a dream or not? As the clock struck 1 with a deep and melancholy toll, Scrooge all of a sudden recalled Marley's promise of the first ghostly visit. At that, the curtains of his bed were drawn apart by a strange, childlike figure dressed in white, from whose head sprung a bright, clear jet of light.